Hey everyone, welcome to another day of building the flight booking engine. Day 77 is where we talk about API versioning. I thought that day 77 would be when I wrap up everything, but I've got a challenge with my AWS, and it's going to actually help me show you something. And wow, there's something that is actually missing. I've just discovered I haven't turned on my cam. I think let me use this other one. Okay, it's now on. Should be okay right now. All right, let's continue with this. So I'm going to talk about API versioning. It's very critical actually, and you need it for your uh, application, especially if you want to build something which is robust. So let's get into it. The question you should be asking is, what is API versioning? Okay, so API versioning is simply a strategy that you implement to manage changes in your API lifecycle. The goal is to ensure that when you introduce a new feature or you modify existing structures, okay, you don't break applications which are currently relying on that old structure. Okay, so it helps you to create what I can call a safe bridge, allowing legacy and modern code to exist. So the number of strategies that can be used for API versioning, and I'm going to talk about some common strategies. The first strategy is called I can call it URL path. Okay, you can version using the URL path. So for example, if you had a get an endpoint, okay, with the method get, like in my case, for this project, we have a number of get endpoints. What can happen is this: I can change, okay, one of the URLs. First of all, let me show you. In the current project, I have something like /API. In fact, let me run it so that you can see what is going on. So I'll expand this, clear, say Docker compose app. It's best when I show you something that is live. So for example, slash maybe API slash flights, okay, or slash users, okay. If this is an endpoint, okay, for picking users, this one has no URL API versioning. To introduce API versioning, I'll do something like slash API /v1. So this v1, V will stand for version, and then 1 is the version number, meaning version 1, v1 or version 1. Okay, then /users. This is one strategy. Okay, so that later in future, if for example you change the data type, maybe you have a field which was taking a string, okay, and then later you want to change to an integer, okay, version 1 stays with the string, okay, then you can have version 2 /API, okay, /version 2, okay, v2 for version 2 /users. This is how you have your API version. So this one has in the implementation, it has a field which requires an integer. So this is how you can use your URL path to version. I wanted to show you the current implementation. So you can see that my flight booking engine's endpoints, okay, have no URL path versioning. Okay, but that is something we need to adopt to today. Okay, Arab says, hello bro, have you heard about the discontinuation for support of the non-enterprise version of the API Amadeus? Yes, it's very sad. Actually, I was planning to make a video about it, but it's good that you know. I am going to make a video about it. Maybe the next stream should be talking about that. It is sad. It is something, when I read it, I just skimmed through the email, and yeah, it was pretty sad. But they're going to discontinue it. The way forward, I don't know yet. Okay, but yeah, there's still some time till that, and yeah, we're going to talk about it very soon in a maybe the next. Let me say, let me just make the next maybe stream about it. Yeah, it was a tough one to see. Okay, I wonder why they they did that. There are people at Amadeus whom I want to talk to here in my country to see what they say about that. Because sometimes you need someone inside to get the actual truth. And I hope they'll be free to share it with me. But yes, Europe, I've heard about that. So, yeah, but even then, even if Amadeus closes out, the concepts we have learned in this project apply to any other uh, engine, okay? Any other external API that gives flight data. And I will share that. Okay, yeah, we're going to explore some other alternatives. So let me get back to versioning. Okay, so this is how you can version using the URL path. In case maybe you change something which is breaking, but you don't want clients who are depending on v2 or version 2 to get affected, so you can create something new. Okay, your new implementation which is breaking, you put it in API, okay, / this time v3 for version 3, okay, / users. This is what you do, okay, so that the old clients, okay, who are using the legacy version 2 are okay, they are not affected, they continue using your application properly, and those who can adopt the new one, v3, they go ahead with that. Okay, of course, after some time you can tell people, all those who are using v1, it's going to be deprecated after maybe 6 months. So make sure you migrate to v2 or v3. That's one way you can do it. The other strategy for API version is using query parameters. Okay, if you've been studying with me from the very beginning, when I began studying FastAPI for about 31 days on this channel, I'm sure you know what a query parameter is. So the next strategy is using query params. Query parameter. So I will not type query parameter in full. Okay, let me just do it. Okay, using query parameters. Yeah. So maybe the pros, maybe before talking about query parameters, what are the pros of using your URL path? Number one is that it is highly visible. Okay, when you use a path, it is highly visible. Anybody, by just looking at it, okay, you can see it. It is highly visible. Oh my god, my writing skills today are betraying me. So highly visible. This is for the URL path. So I'll put, these are the pros. Okay, highly visible. Also, like you can see, it is easy to catch. Okay, you can easily catch that URL path and know that so and so is asking for data from this path. Easy to catch. And I think for that, and we can talk about also the cons. Okay, for the cons, I think you see it kind of like violates REST principles. Okay, yeah, same resource, different URI. Okay, yeah, so technically violates REST principles because we have same resource, different URI. Let's talk about query params. For query params, if we had the same endpoint, okay, the same get endpoint, this is how it would be defined. Okay, you'd have /API /users. Then to structure or to define a query parameter, you need what is it called? You need the question mark. Okay, put the question mark. You put the question mark. Then the version number. V for the version, say equals to 1. Okay. Later, if you change to version 2, it will be /API /users. Okay. Question mark. Version equals to 2. This one is also very easy to implement, like you can see, and it helps with flexible defaulting. It's very easy to have default values, okay? Whereby if someone doesn't give you, let's say like specify their version number, by default, you give them maybe version 1 or version 2 according to your roles, okay? That is the pros, okay? Maybe I should have written it down here. That the pros of using query parameters, the first one is that it is easy to implement, easy to implement, easy to implement, and also it has flexible defaulting. Okay, it's very easy. The con about this, okay, the disadvantage I can think about is probably when you want to have like sorting and filtering parameters. Okay, it is easy to confuse. Okay, easy to confuse. Okay, can be confused. I need to get a writing tool. Okay, which will make certain things very easy. Can be confused with sorting and filtering parameters. Can be confused with sorting or filtering params. Sorting or filter params. That's the con I see. I don't know what other disadvantage you can identify. But that's what I can see at the moment. Okay, so we talked about using URL path to do API versioning. I've talked about query parameters. The other strategy that I know of, again, if I miss out on any, please leave it in the comment section. Okay, I always tell you I'm happy to learn from anybody at any time. Okay, I do not know everything. Another way is using custom headers. Okay, by creating a custom header, and we looked at headers when doing FastAPI. Okay, when learning FastAPI, even when building the flight booking engine, many endpoints have headers. Now, you create a custom header, okay? Usually, the most common one, I don't know why it is that way, but I also found it in the industry, okay? But you can call it anything, okay? But usually the header that you find people using for versioning is called the X. You find people creating a custom header called X API dash version. Okay, this is what they do. Create a header like this. Okay, then you say version 1, just like you would have an authorization header. Say maybe authorization. Okay, authorization, then the value, okay, you put your token, okay, your random token here. Let me put something sensible. You put the token as the value. So headers are like kind of key value things, okay? So this would be for version 1. In case your clients had, you have something that is going to break, okay, that you want to introduce and it's going to be breaking, and you don't want people who have been using your API to be affected, those who are using the old feature or the old way of doing things can remain with version 1, and those who now need or who are going to use the new feature can go to version 2. I'm using the custom header, okay? You can now go to version 2 by saying all clients should send me a header, okay? Saying X API version, okay, is now 2, okay, or 3, depending on what you're doing, okay, what level you have reached. The pros of this, okay, I don't know what you guys think are the pros of this, but what quickly comes to my mind is that it keeps the URL clean, okay? It keeps URLs clean, okay? Not only that, it also keeps them permanent, okay? It keeps the URL permanent. The URL will never change, which is a good thing, okay? Yeah. So only the headers can be changed, okay? What is tricky about it is like it's kind of a little bit harder to test. I don't know how I can show you this, but try versioning using headers, okay, in your application, and try to test it in a tool like Postman. You'll see it's a little bit tricky, okay? Maybe it's testable, but I think the best word is to say harder, okay? Harder to test in tools like Postman, okay? In a browser. Sometimes after a long day, you start mixing up words, okay? It is harder to test in a browser, okay? Not in Postman, but harder to test in a browser. But you need a tool like Postman, okay? So I want you to try to test this in Postman, okay? It will be easier to test in Postman, but testing API versioning in a browser is a little bit tricky, a little bit, okay? But of course, if you know what you're doing, you still can. Then the other way they can think about how you can manage custom headers, okay, is what I would call content negotiation. Not how I would manage headers, but how I would manage or how I would do API versioning. I'm starting to see the disadvantage of doing streams at the end of the day. Content negotiation. So this strategy is actually similar to what we have here above, okay? It also uses a header. The difference that this one is not a custom header. This one is using a header called the accept, okay? I think you all know accept, whereby, let me get a different color. The accept header. For example, we always do something like accept, okay? Accept, then you say application forward slash JSON. This is something common, okay? You've already seen, especially when you're using a tool like Postman. But now for API versioning, before this JSON, you'd append, okay? So you'd say application, then forward slash, okay? Forward slash, here maybe like v1, okay? v1 for version 1, okay, plus JSON, okay. Yeah, I think it's the most complex to implement and test. That's an obvious con, okay. Yeah, obvious con, the most complex to, in fact, with most people, you'll find them doing something like this. It would be something like vnd dot v1 plus JSON. If you know what vnd means, please mention it in the comments. I've seen this a lot, okay? So yeah, in case of version 1, this one, I mean, in case of version 2, this one would change to version 2, and so on and so forth. So how would you, well, when you need to version, like I said, when you don't, when you have breaking changes, okay? You must version when you're introducing breaking changes. Make sure you do that for your APIs. Every time you have a breaking change, make sure you version. Very, very important. What are the types of breaking changes? A breaking change could be a deletion. Maybe you're removing an endpoint or a field, okay? Another breaking change would be renaming, something related to renaming. You're changing the name of a field. For example, maybe changing username to full name. Maybe right now the endpoint needs username, okay? Then later you need full name. That's a breaking change. So you can say version 1 is using username, then version 2 is going to use full name, so that those who are using username don't have any issue. It continues working for them, okay? Then you inform people we have a new version called version 2. We are using full name. Another one is, another breaking change is when you have type changes, okay? For example, when you're changing a data type. For example, turning a field from a string into an integer like I mentioned, I think earlier here, okay? Then another thing is constraints. Imagine you're changing a constraint from being, maybe let's say, for example, you had a constraint of something being required, okay? So required is a constraint that this parameter is required. Then later you make it optional, okay? Or right now, a parameter is optional, then later you make it required. That also requires versioning. So what are the cases? Deletions, for example, removing an endpoint or a field. Another one is when you're renaming, for example, changing the name of a field, like I told you, from username to full name. Another one is when types change, for example, changing a data type of a field from an integer to a string, okay, or an integer to a decimal, or an integer to a boolean. And also when you change constraints, like making a previously optional field required. That is when you do API versioning. Very, very important. So let us see what I'm going to implement in my code. Let me go to the code right now. Here, Monk with hair says, "Hey Nehemiah, are you planning to cover microservices as well? I saw you uploaded a video for monolithic." So Monk with hair, that video is actually a video for microservices. It is day one of microservices. Okay. I think maybe the thumbnail was misleading. Please let me know, is the thumbnail misleading or the title misleading? I will change it. Okay. Yes, my plan is to cover microservices, and that video is the first of its kind on this channel. Okay. It is the first on microservices. In that video, I simply discuss the difference between a microservice and a monolith and why we need a microservice. Okay, that is day one. I'm going to release another video on day two where now I start building the actual microservices. So yes, that's my plan, to go from like day one in a similar fashion like this. Okay, but I don't think we shall reach day 77. Because I discovered I made many mistakes. I can call them mistakes, but also they've been learning opportunities for me. Okay. Like in this series, there are things I shouldn't have done, like maybe learning Terraform. I don't know if people benefited from that. I should have just maybe, I don't know. I should have just maybe just began using Terraform, began using, I don't know, several things. Anyway, it's what it is. Okay. Because I've guessed those who can skip what they have to skip in this series can skip. Okay. But yeah, it won't reach 77. I want to structure it in such a way that it is for microservices. Okay. And it goes at the aim of teaching microservices. Okay. For example, I don't want to, if for example I'm going to build the services using Java and Go and Python and JavaScript, I don't want to get tied, okay, to teaching JavaScript or teaching Python or teaching FastAPI. No, okay. I want to leave it open. You get? I want to leave it not open, but closed actually. It should not be open, but closed to only microservices. Because in this playlist, you find that I introduced so many things, okay, along the way. But which I guess was good for me to practice more and also for people who don't know about them to learn. You get? Monk says also approximate how many more videos are left in this flight booking engine project. Actually, Monk, let me tell you something, okay? This project, okay, to reach the MVP. At this point, I think the MVP is done. I'm planning to make a video called MVP complete, okay? And by the way, the project actually, let me tell you, good news is that the project has actually is being tested by real people. That's the good news. It's being tested by real people. And by real people, I mean people who are actually going to use it at the office. But the number of videos reach the MVP, I think are like 2. Okay. After the MVP, what I want to do is this, Monk. There are things which I think I wanted to stop at the MVP video, which is like only 2 videos away from, or one, okay, away from it. But the challenge about that is that I feel this kind of way that if I don't talk about certain things, I would be cheating people who began from the beginning, because I promised to cover almost all concepts that someone needs to know to build a full stack application. Okay. So what I'm going to do is this. When I reach MVP complete, okay, that will be like the end of the MVP. And anybody who wants to end there, it's totally fine. Okay. But after the MVP later in future, okay, or maybe immediately, depending on how time and my day job goes, I will create certain videos, okay, which are like, can I say advanced? Like for DevOps, I would want to talk about certain things like Kubernetes, okay, how to deploy this project using Kubernetes. There are things I want to talk about, like in the CI/CD process. By the way, I discovered an issue. Okay, I'll just hiring that CI/CD thing that I showed you guys. That's very beginner, but there's a better way of doing the CD part. Okay, the CD is there's a better way of doing it, and and I feel like if I don't talk about it, I'll be unfair to people who have been following the playlist. That's the thing that is disturbing me. Okay, but ideally right now the MVP is done. Okay, the MVP is done. Now let me tell you something. I wasn't going to talk about API versioning, by the way. But later when I was thinking, I look at the app, I'm like, oh, how can I build a backend? And people are saying they want to take an opportunity to learn using this playlist, and I've not talked about API versioning. Okay, it looks something very small but very important concept to know. So I'll, after the MVP video, time and time again in future, I will release videos on topics, okay, which I think are important for people to know. Okay, but to close it up, I think we're like 2 videos away from 2. Okay, yeah. So apologies, I didn't notice the thumbnail clearly. It's okay. It's okay. That is probably my fault. Should have told the designer to do something better or only put microservices only. Good to know about that. I appreciate. So let's do it, okay? It's actually quite easy to do API versioning. I'm going to choose, is this the main.py? Yes, this is main.py. I'm going to do the URL versioning, okay? It's quite simple and very direct. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is to import the router from FastAPI, okay? At the top here, I'll just say comma, import router. Then down here, I can simply minimize this, okay? Minimize this and scroll. So just before this, okay? Are you seeing just before these what are they called? These statements from line 85 to line 92, okay? I'm going to simply create a new router, okay? A new router instance using this API router up here. It's supposed to be API router, not router. Sorry. Thanks for AI. Okay, I was able to actually details API router. So if in fact, if you go to other files like this user's router, you see, we imported API router. So it's supposed to be API router. So I'm going to come just above line 85 and define the API router for version 1. So I'll say API v1 version, meaning v1 for version 1 router, okay, router will be equals to API router, okay, like that. So in future, if I need to have like maybe API router version 2, okay, I'll have the same thing. I'll say API v2, meaning version 2 router, okay, will be equals to API router. So I can use URL versioning to separate the versions, okay, one from another, which is quite very, very simple. Do you see it? Very simple. Now, after that, what do? I can come here. I can remove this one since we only have v1. And here I say, I want to have a prefix, okay? The prefix, okay, will be this, okay? What you see AI suggesting, okay? That we have / API / v1 for version 1, okay? And then after that, we can now replace all these, okay? Instead of saying app.include router, it will be API v1 router.include router. So I'll click here, okay? Press Option on my keyboard, click, 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 okay? Then I copy all this. I've lost it, okay? Let me start by copying all this stuff. My goal is to replace everywhere what you're seeing up, all this up from line 87 to 94. I want to replace up. So I'll click again just before the dot or the period. Click, press Option on my keyboard or Alt if you're on Windows. Then click, 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 click. Okay. Then delete that and paste. Okay. So you see it is API v1 router.include. So I've added all the sub routers to this main API version 1 router. Then down here, I can do what you see what AI is suggesting. Now the app is what we include, is now where we include the v1 router. Okay. Say app dot now include, okay, API v1 router. Tomorrow, if I have version 2, okay, so let me do this. I have version 2, change this to v2, change this to v2. Then here I can say app.include API v2 version 2 router. That is if I'm using URL versioning, path versioning. So you see how easy it is and very interesting. So I'll remove this. Okay. So remove this. Okay. Let me put some tags. Okay. I'll put a tag. So tags. Simply say version 1. Something like that. Okay. And then let's go to the browser to test this. So you see, I hope you've understood, guys, how important versioning is. Okay. So it's ain't reflecting yet. Do I need to kill and run? I hope that's the case. Let the server restart. So I hope I've not missed out on anything. So let me see, v1, the prefix is that. Yeah, I think we're okay. I'm just going through the logs just to make sure there's nothing wrong. Let me go to the browser. Okay, yeah. So you see, we have here version 1, okay? What's not in the version 1 is just the metrics, but even that can be included, okay? So you see, so version 1, you'd have this. In case there's version 2, you should add a tag for version 2. So you see, it's now API/v1/register. Now, which means in the front end, the base URL must also change. You get it has to be slash the domain, okay, slash API slash v1, okay. And trust me, it looks something simple, okay, something simple, but it's actually very important, okay. I feel like if I was maybe like in an interview or something of the sort, I would ask someone, a junior backend developer, what is API versioning? Okay, not to see if they know how to implement it, but at least to know that if they are aware about it. Okay, so guys, I really hope this is you appreciate this concept, okay, of API versioning. Like I always say, understand the concepts. The way it's implemented maybe might be different. Okay, in FastAPI it might be using instances of APIRouter. Okay, in maybe I don't know Java or whatever is different. Okay, it depends. You get it depends. So I have a request. When you're implementing API versioning in your project, ask yourself, okay, what is the best strategy? Okay, number one, you need it. Trust me, you need it because there are always breaking changes. Unless if you're building a project, just a one-off project that you're going to build and throw away and never touch, okay? But a project which is going to be used by users daily, monthly, year after year, changes happen, okay? Because business needs and business requirements change. So to avoid these changes, these breaking changes and clients complaining and losing customers, you need API versioning, okay? So implement API versioning like I've told you, but think about the strategy. What strategy works best for your case, for your project, okay? And sometimes you need to discuss it with the team, okay? This is something I've forgotten to always tell you. Many of the things you see me doing here, I've done them because I'm a one-man army, okay? But the best practice is that if I had a team member, I wouldn't make certain decisions alone, okay? If you need to discuss something with your team, make sure you discuss it and have that discussion documented that on such and such a day, we had a meeting attended by the following number of people, and we discussed A, B, and C. The conclusion was this, the action points was this. It will help you, okay? Trust me on that. It will help you and you'll be a better communicator. Yeah, sometimes there are things which are not technical, but I have to tell you, okay? Because I've realized this, many people are beginners and they need to know about it, okay? The way you communicate matters, okay? Many times what makes us not to get certain opportunities because we are poor communicators and you don't know how to work in teams, okay? The more you communicate in a team, the better you are, okay? And you can only become better at communicating by communicating. You get, yeah, you should by keeping quiet. The more attempts you make, the better you'll become. So thank you all for watching. See you in the next stream or the next video, okay? So I'm going to try to alternate between streams and videos, okay? Because I need that microservices thing done and completed as soon as possible. So bye for now. Like, share, subscribe.